Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments. So I just want to stay on top of this from a collectibles finance standpoint. So I'm presenting you breaking news that already broke, therefore it's broken news because the internet's already in a frenzy over this. For those unaware, news broke late yesterday afternoon that Collectors, the company that owns grading giants such as PSA and also SGC, has just entered into agreement to acquire Beckett. This, of course, includes BGS, Beckett Grading Services. Now, to put this in perspective for you, and for those unaware as to how the trading card grading game is played, at present time, PSA, SGC, and Beckett control roughly 79 to 80% of the entire graded card marketplace. This acquisition means that out of the big four conglomerates playing in this space, the only independent company that has credibility on the secondary market at present time and is not owned and controlled directly by collectors is CGC. So this is where we are in the year 2025, rapidly heading into 2026 in the antiques and collectibles trade. You basically have four main companies, and three of them are owned by one conglomerate. Now, a lot of people are already wondering how this is going to take shape. We already do have some details. It looks like Collectors is going to operate Beckett as a standalone independent company. The problem that I have with that, they also did that with SGC Grading. And it really looks like, at least from my perspective and a lot of other collectors, investors, dealers' perspectives out there, that they kind of really promote PSA over SGC. And this really came to light, I don't know, a couple of months back. I reported on this. The Babe Ruth card that originally sold for over $7 million at auction, later pretty much came up for bid and only sold for a little over $4 million. That card was graded by SGC. And one of the things that played into that a lot of experts in the trade are talking about is the fact that unfortunately there were other problems with that auction. Mainly the seller pulled that card off the market for only 2 years, then brought it back onto the market and consigned it willy-nilly to Heritage at that particular point in time. But overall, that card was graded by SGC. Had that card have been graded by PSA, that may have had a different outcome entirely. So the problem that we have now is all this concentrated power, concentrated wealth in the hands of one major grading conglomerate. Now, I don't know about you. This leaves even someone like me very, very uneasy as to what this means going forward. Now, to be fair, consolidations in the antiques and collectibles trade, whether it's on the grading company side or the auction company side, really are not uncommon, especially as more private equity, more billionaires, more wealthy individuals discover the cash cow known as the antiques and collectibles trade. You know, I said this before in other videos. Usually when billionaires choose to invest in these markets, they do it behind the scenes. They do it through private equity. They try to take control of grading companies or auction houses. So this is pretty much par for the course. I'm just kind of still in a daze here, wondering at what point is it going to take for the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, to get involved in this type of business. I mean, there's already a lot of people out there talking about, well, because of this acquisition, I'm going to start dealing with some of the lesser known grading companies. And I'm not going to name names. You know who I mean. The ones that are outside the big four that I already named. The big four, again, being PSA, SGC, Beckett, which are now all controlled by Collectors, and then on the other end, CGC. The problem that you have is the auction companies also have a say in this, where they tend to promote a lot of the graded cards from the big four, meaning the auction companies aren't too keen on promoting a lot of the cards graded by the lesser known grading companies out there. Even if they are doing everything by the book, even if they're doing everything right. This is why, from an investing standpoint, if you guys come to me and you tell me, hey, Sean, I want some advice. I'm going to be investing in graded sports cards, graded Pokemon cards, just graded trading cards in general. I'm probably going to advise in most cases, depending on the market, depending on where we're at, especially where we are now, that you actually go through PSA. And there's a lot of people that have a problem with that. And I understand that there's a lot of internet theories. There's conspiracies out there where everybody has an opinion. Well, PSA did this. CGC did this with Pokemon cards that were misrepresented at some certain point in time. Look, grading is more of an art than a science. I hate to say that. And unfortunately, where we are with the amount of money flowing through these markets, grading is almost like the Fed. It's a necessary evil at present time. And this is where I challenge a lot of my critics who really do not take a step back and understand why grading is so important in the first place. You need to realize that if we get in my DeLorean time machine and we go back to a point in time where third-party grading didn't exist, it was a lot worse. That said, I am not too happy about this latest development. I really need to see how this unfolds, and I really would urge caution for a lot of you individuals out there that are paying exorbitant premiums for BGS Black Label cards. This was one of the things I was wary of whenever I have people come into my comment section. Well, Sean, a PSA 10 will never ever compare to a BGS Black Label card, which is an ultra premium, all subgrade 10 condition card graded by Beckett Grading Services. Well, here we are. We're collectors, owners of PSA, is now going to be taking control of Beckett. Again, I want to make this very clear. They're claiming that crossover grading is not going to be impacted, and they're going to run Beckett as an independent company. But we all can see what happened with SGC when they were brought under the collector's umbrella. So we can already see how this is most likely going to play out. I just want you guys to know I'm just as cautious as a lot of you out there, even though I'm one of those evil investors, even though I do have a lot of high-profile vintage Pokemon cards that are graded by PSA and the coveted PSA 10 condition. This still does concern me as an investor, as a collector, as someone who is an outspoken critic for the little guy that is trying to play in this market. It is getting very hard to navigate a market that is so rapidly changing due to the massive amounts of money that is flowing through the trade from the billionaire class, from the evil corporate investors, from the use of private equity. It is really creating a minefield that the average collector, dealer, investor, speculator needs to be made aware of. There are risks in these markets. In my opinion, I'm going to say this again. I know usually it falls on deaf ears. There should be regulation in this market. The FTC should step in and say, hey, is it wise that we have one major grading conglomerate that now is pretty much going to control 80% of the graded card market? I mean, this is just insane to me that we got to a point where monopolies are now accepted. Monopolies are the norm. Monopolies are now rewarded. I mean, some of these individuals failed to get past the first few chapters of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. If you've ever read that book, that's pretty much the blueprint of what capitalism is based on, and it actually talks about the dangers of monopolies. Well, in the year 2025, for how corrupt our political system is, for how corrupt our government is, I guess monopolies are the norm, and everybody else just suffers under them with the consequences. So here we are, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm doing my best to keep this video under 10 minutes because I do want to wait for the dust to settle. Then I'm going to do an even longer video on this. But just to give you my thoughts, I am a little bit cautious about this. Even though I am a fan of PSA, from a grading perspective, this really, really concerns me that we now have 3 out of 4 of the major grading companies under one grading company's umbrella. That's quite concerning. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you are subscribed, I will see you in another upcoming video.